Sige. So this is where the coverage for the final. So start. I'll give you a little review since we already started this one sa midterms. So before we'll really move on to the different statistical tests, let us differentiate first parametric and non-parametric. So do not forget, class, na if you're going to do research, the first thing that you need to do is actually identify the type of data that you will be gathering. So either it is nominal, ordinal, or naka-scale. Sa scale, either interval or ratio. Now, after that, you have to identify what type of test are you going to do in analyzing and interpreting the data. So it can either be parametric, or if the assumptions of the parametric test will not be satisfied, that's the time you use the non-parametric test. Okay? So for the parametric test, number one, you need to ensure that the data set is normally distributed. That's the number one assumption to be met. Again, the data set should be normally distributed. Therefore, if you are going to make a graph of all the collected data, you have to have a bell-shaped curve. Or if you're going to check it with like the skewness, kailangan masatisfy yung required number for the skewness. And when you say normality of distribution, it means we don't have outliers or extreme values. So when you say outliers, these are values that are far away from the usual values na makuha mo. So like if you are going to give a test for your respondents, like 100-item na test, if most of the scores are between 80 to 100, tapos meron kang dalawa or tatlong tao na yung score is 10 to 15, ang tawag natin doon outliers kasi masyado silang malayo from the usual values na nakuha ng karamihan. So that will affect the distribution, that will even affect the measure of the central tendency. Since you have outliers, the mean cannot be representative for the center of the distribution. Okay? Therefore, if we cannot satisfy the normality of the distribution, we are going to use the non-parametric tests. And aside from that, aside from the normality of the distribution, we can only use parametric test if we have continuous data or we have real numbers. Okay? We have real numbers as our data set. If it is not a real number, example, you are asking about the sex of the respondents, then their answers may be male or female. Now, this male and female class are not numerical data. Okay? We call it, diba, nominal type of data since you only have classification. So, hindi mo pwedeng gamitin si parametric test if you are going to analyze it na and interpret it. So please take note of that the measurement level for the parametric test will always be either interval or ratio. Okay? So again, if these assumptions, we call them assumptions, if these assumptions will not be met, we will be using the non-parametric equivalent. So just like when the distribution of the data set is not normal or your data set is either nominal or ordinal. So actually, na-present ko na ito sa inyo. This is the flow chart na ginagamit natin in selecting commonly used statistical tests. If you have your you have your experience in making research, you encounter statement of the problem asking for significant difference or asking for significant relationship. So dito yan siya papasok. Okay? Do not forget to first identify the data type. If it is continuous or we have real numbers, ano yan, data that can be counted, you have this side on the left side, you will follow the left side of the flow chart. However, if you only have discrete or categorical data, mga nominal data, automatically you will be using the chi-square. Okay? Now for the left side, if you have real numbers as your data, then mahahati into siya kasi again, we have two types of questions being asked in research. So either relationship or differences. Now, if we are getting the relationship of variables, if we have a true independent variable, we will be using regression analysis. Actually, most of the time, we use the regression analysis if we are predicting, we are identifying the factors that will predict a certain phenomenon. So for example, your study is about factors affecting the academic performance of the students. So marami tayong factors yan, di ba? It can be study habit, it can be the family structure, it can be the environmental condition of the student, or many other things. Peer pressure, those are examples of factors affecting the academic performance. Now, if we want to test if those factors have really relationship with the academic performance, we can use regression analysis. This is used if we want to know if these factors are really predictive. Mape-predict niya ba yung academic performance? Kung ganito ba yung study habit ng isang student, tataas ba yung academic performance niya or bababa? That's what I mean by determining whether these factors are predictive of the academic performances or not. But nevertheless, that is actually looking for the relationship. However, if we don't have true independent variables, we will just be doing correlation analysis. And if we have satisfied the parametric assumption stated above, the test for relationship class for parametric test is called the Pearson's R. Pero again, if hindi yan na-satisfy kasi yung data mo are categorical o kaya ordinal o kaya hindi normally distributed, you use the non-parametric equivalent, and that is called the Spearman's rank correlation. So this is just getting to know the names of the different statistical tests that we have. We will be doing a deeper discussion on this, including how to compute for this. I'll be teaching you the manual computation, but it will be requiring a lot of time since mahahaba class yung formula nito, mahahabang computation ito. So, kaya ang sabi ko, as much as possible, we'll have the software. Since most likely pag nagre-research ka, you will really be using the software for this. Especially if you have a lot of data. Meron ka respondents 100 ka buok na ugma pa ka mahuman og compute for that if you are going to do the manual computation. Kaya lang our problem, meron sa inyo na walang access sa software since ang ginagamit lang ay cellphone. So again, yung software kasi natin requires either a laptop or a desktop. Okay? So again, the non-parametric equivalent of Pearson's R is called the Spearman's rank correlation. So ito sila yung para sa testing of the relationship. Okay? Ayan sila. Testing of relationship. When you say testing the relationship, example ng study na yan, knowledge and practices. Knowledge versus practices. example about, wala ko nagamit yung pen, mouse lang ko. Pangitas ko nga dyan. Pen na lang. Okay, let's continue. So, example class about dengue prevention. Dengue prevention. Di ba meron tayo sinet ng DOH, DOH, yung mga ways on how to prevent transmission of dengue. Yung hindi mag-stock ng tubig, ng stagnant water, di ba? Like mga ganyan. So kapag ka nagtetest ka kasi ng relationship ng knowledge and practices, siyempre gagawa tayo ng questionnaire. Ang ibig sabihin kasi niyan is kung tataas ba yung knowledge nila, kung mataas ba yung knowledge nila about sa dengue prevention, mataas din ba yung pag-practice nila or mababa. So yan yung ibig sabihin ng testing the relationship. So knowledge lang ito ha, iba kasi yung knowledge, like alam nila na ganito dapat ang gawin. Ang check natin kung pinapractice ba nila yon. So may relationship ba yung knowledge doon sa practices. Yan yung ibig sabihin ng asking for the significant relationship of our variables. Okay? Now, if ang study ninyo is not asking about relationship, instead comparing two or more variables, din dito tayo sa center na side or almost to the right side of the flow chart. So ito yon, differences between what? Meron lang tayong test for equality of variances, but we are going to use this one to do assumption checks, since you can only use parametric test if you have equal variances. So do not forget variances, or the variance is included in our measure of variation. Actually, variance class is the square of the standard deviation, and that will measure the precision of our data. What do you mean by precision? It means that the data are close with each other, or they are close with the mean. So this will measure how dispersed your data are. And if dispersed siya masyado, we have something wrong with our collected data, or kung nag-experiment tayo, we have a problem with the collected data coming from the experiment done in the laboratory. Now, again, differences, how we are testing the differences here. Most of the time, it will be the differences between the mean, since the mean is the most commonly used measure of central tendency. The most important thing in doing research na comparative research, meaning we are comparing two things or two groups, or not just two groups. I mean, pag merong comparison, the first thing that we need to ask is how many groups are we comparing? Kasi kapag dalawa lang, ito yung sundin natin na arrow dito ha. If na-satisfy ng lahat ng groups yung mga assumptions written above, ang tawag natin sa test is the independent t-test or the paired t-test. And then pag hindi na-satisfy, ang non-parametric equivalent ng unpaired t-test is called the man-Whitney U-test. And for the paired t-test, ang partner niyan is si Wilcoxon rank signed or sums test. Okay? So may mga non-parametric equivalent yan sila. You can ask question or questions if hindi na siya nasundan, kasi medyo complicated talaga itong flowchart na ito. Now, if you have more than two groups, then kailangan mo din munang masatisfy yung mga assumptions here sa taas. Kapag more than two groups, you have 3 or 4 groups being compared with each other, that's the time you use ANOVA. Okay, again, that's the time you use ANOVA. So you only use ANOVA if you are comparing things, and we have to make sure na it will be between 2 or more groups. Okay? So may kasunod pa kasi yung ANOVA. If for example, the result of the ANOVA is yes, merong significant difference between the three groups. For example, we will be doing another test, the post hoc test, either the Tukey's or the Bonferronis, just to pinpoint saan banda yung difference ng mga grupo. Kasi ANOVA will just tell you that there is a significant difference between the groups you are comparing, but it will not actually pinpoint kung saan yung difference nila. So it will be the post hoc test done after the ANOVA that will pinpoint that one. Okay? And then, paano naman if we cannot satisfy the parametric assumptions for ANOVA? That's the time we use the non-parametric equivalent of ANOVA, which is called the Kruskal-Wallis test. Okay, again, that is called the Kruskal-Wallis test. And just like ANOVA, if the result of the Kruskal-Wallis test is significant, may significant difference daw yung mga grupo, then we will also do another analysis. This time it's called the Dunn's test to pinpoint saan ang difference between the groups. Okay? So again, ito yung ating flowchart na ginagamit to know the correct statistical test that we are going to use for the analysis and interpretation of our collected data, especially in research. Questions or clarifications regarding this? Just get to know first with the names of the test. I believe you are familiar with ANOVA kasi yan yung mga sikat na mga statistical test natin. ANOVA or even the t-test. But yes, there are other tests that exist na pwede nating gamitin sa research. Okay? So, walang question. So, let's move on. Last time, I think nag-start na tayo nito, testing differences between mean. So, we will be talking about t-test. First, about the independent t-test. We have two types of t-test class. Again, the first one is called the independent t-test or the independent sample t-test. Pwede din siya tawagin na unpaired t-test. Okay, again, pwede din siyang tawagin as unpaired t-test. Now, when do we use the independent sample t-test? Number one, we use this if we are comparing two groups only. Okay, again, we have two groups that we are comparing here, and most likely we will be comparing their means. Kasi nga, again, that is our most commonly used measure of central tendency. Now, another thing, that's number one, how we are comparing two groups. Number two, if we only have, ano tawag dyan? We only have small sample, then we can use the independent sample t-test. So like mga less than 30, yes, you can use the independent sample t-test. Pero pwede din naman siyang gamitin pag mag more than 30 siya. It's just that t-test can be used even if konti lang yung sample natin. And the standard deviation of the population is unknown. Kasi remember, during midterms, we also talk about z-test. The z-test is also used for comparing. Meron din doon comparison, di ba? Meron tayong two sample z-test doon. Ang kaibahan nila, si z-test is ginagamit if we have more than 30 samples and the standard deviation of the population is known. Meaning we know the characteristics of the population. Kapag independent sample t-test kasi, nag-conduct tayo ng research pero we don't know the characteristics of the population. We don't even know the standard deviation. And even if you have a small amount of sample, you can use the independent sample t-test. Now take note that the t-test, all the t-tests, not just the independent sample t-test, including the paired t-tests, t-tests are under the parametric test, meaning we have assumptions to be met. Number one for that is the data set should be normally distributed, and that your dependent variable or your outcome variable should be either in interval or ratio scales. Now, naka-highlight sa screen, the independent sample t-test is used when the samples are drawn from different populations. So, anong ibig sabihin yan? Kagaya ng example na ito, a study was conducted by a group of fourth-year pharmacy students in a school to determine the level of male and female community pharmacist awareness on antimicrobial dispensing. So meron tayong dalawang grupo here, male and female. And two groups ito ha, two groups. And these groups are independent from each other. Though lahat sila community pharmacist, pero remember that male and female are totally different from each other. And that if you're going to test the male, their answers have nothing to do with the female. Kaya nga tinawag siyang independent sample t-test. So itong dalawang grupo, you have entirely different participants, respondents, or subjects. Okay, iba 'di ba ang babae, iba yung lalaki. Pero we are comparing their characteristics. So again, ang tawag natin dito ay independent sample t-test. So wag kayo malito diyan. If I still have time later, we'll talk about paired t-test also, and you will understand later ano yung pinagkaibahan nila. Bakit nahiwalay silang dalawa? Anyway, take note of the formula, okay? Especially those na walang software, kasi I'll be requiring you to do the math to show your solution for this. So ito yung ating formula for t-test. T is equal to x1 minus x2 divided by x sub x1 minus x2. Pero kino-compute din natin plus si s sub x1 minus x2. And ang formula ay nasa baba. So s sub x1 minus x2 is the square root of n1 s1 squared plus n2 s2 squared divided by n1 plus n2 minus 2 times n1 plus n2 divided by n1 times n2. Tas kayo ito ang formula. No question, ma'am, can we place this an index card? Yes, you can always place this an index card and use the index card during quiz or exam. Wait lang, excuse me. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Saan Para saan yung formula sa baba? Itong formula sa baba is used to compute this one. Okay? Ayan, pagkapareho sila. Again, this one is our formula to get the S sub x1 minus x2. And then actually, may formula din tayo dito sa kanilang dalawa. So marami tayong formula. Hindi lang siya basta-bastang na-identify from the collected data. Nagpo-compute din tayo for that. So again ha, ayaw magkalibog. Our t-test or our t-score is computed using this formula, x1 minus x2 divided by s sub x1 minus x2. Now, yung s sub x1 minus x2, ito yung ating formula. Pero yung N1, wait. N1 S1 squared na yan ay kino-compute din using this formula. So this is the summation of all the scores in the group 1 squared minus the summation of all the scores of the group 1, this time sa ang squared sa labas, divided by the N1. Please copy first the sets of formula natin and then we will do this later step by step. And then itong N2 S2 squared, N2 S2 squared, ito din yung ating formula. X2 squared minus X2 squared over N2. Okay, please copy that first. Okay, medyo madugo ang computation sa statistics kapag nagma-manual computation tayo. It's my calculator. Tutulugan ko. Let me check. 84 squared divided by 10. 774 or 68.4. Wait lang. Actually, check lang ako bakit iba yung answer. 84 squared divided by 10 is 705.6. 744 minus answer 38.4. Anyway, yan ang ibig sabihin yung mga X and mga N dyan. X1 class is referring to group 1. The mean of the group 1. Ito yan siya. This one. Okay. And then, the X2 is the mean of the group 2. So, pag mali na mo sa mean, mali na natanan. So, this is the X2 here. This is the mean of the group 2. And then, yung N1 S1 squared is the sum of squares of the group 1. Para lang ito siya sa group 1. I'll teach you how to do that later. And then, yung N2 S2 squared, sa sum of squares naman ito ng group 2. Now, yung N, lahat ng N is the sample size ng group 1. Okay? The number of observations sa group 1. So kung meron kang 10 respondents sa group 1, then the N will be 10. And N2 is for the group 2. Again, that's the sample size. Okay? And yung ating, Yan yung ating formula for the independent sample t-test. So, what are we going to do now? Number 1, we will do the manual computation. Number 2, I think nag-Excel tayo last time, pero we'll do it again sa Excel. And number 3, we will be using the JAST software. And then the most important thing is after the computation, we'll be able to interpret the numbers na na-compute natin. And we will come up with a decision or a conclusion for the given examples. Okay, so we have here example. To find out which method of teaching is more effective in improving performance, 2 groups of trainees were randomly chosen for the study. So the following scores reflect their performance after the training. So again, magko-compare tayo ng dalawang grupo. Ang una, they receive this experiential training and yung isa lecture. So if we're going to come up with the hypothesis for the null, syempre the null is stated in the negative form. We have here that 2 methods of teaching do not significantly differ in improving the performance. Or actually can state this as there is no significant difference between the 2 methods of teaching in improving the performance. So actually, it doesn't matter how you are going to state it as long as parehas sila ng ibig sabihin. Okay? And then for the alternative hypothesis, which is stated in the positive form, we have here the 2 methods of teaching significantly differ in improving the performance. Again, I'll type as a screen. You can also state this just like this one. There is no significant difference between the 2 methods of teaching in improving the performance. Pwede mo din siyang dagdagan para complete sentence, improving the performance of the trainees. Okay, so pwedeng ganyan. Kopihin ko siya. Tanggalin ko lang yung no later. Okay. So, pwede siyang ganito pagka-state. Okay. And then, let's have another one for the alternative hypothesis. Ayan. I-copy ko lang siya, tinanggal ko lang yung no. Okay. So, pwede din ganito yung pagka-state nyo class sa mga hypothesis natin. Kung babasahin natin, parehas lang naman sila ng ibig sabihin. Now, ito na yung result. Ginawa natin ito sa Excel at last time. But let's do the manual computation. Okay? So, ito yung scores ng mga trainees class for the experiential method of teaching. And ito yung sa lecture. So, independent sample t-test ito kasi the 2 groups are entirely different from each other. This one receives a different treatment or a different method that's experiential. And this group here receives another method. And that is lecture. So again, entirely different groups but we are comparing the 2. So again, ang gagamitin natin ay independent sample t-test. And at the same time, we have small amount of sample. So dito yung N1 natin ay just 10. Anong ibig sabihin ng N? Sample size or the number of observations. So kung bibilangin mo yan, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Meron kang 10. Okay? And that is also true for the group 2. The N or the sample size is 10. Now, let's do the manual computation na pagkahaba-haba. Wait lang. I'll just set this up since I have limited space. Remember, our formula is T is equal to, I don't memorize the formula. Yeah, x1 minus x2 divided by, what was that? It's x, no? Ay, s pala. x1 minus x2. Huh? S x1 minus x2. But before we can proceed with the computation of this kasi, kailangan muna natin i-compute yung S sa baba. Pero pwede natin ilagay na dito. Remember, x1 is the mean of the group 1. So if the group 1 is the experiential, we are going to get the mean, which is actually given in the screen. So how do you get the mean? You add everything, 8 plus 10 plus 12 plus 6 plus 6 plus 7 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7. That is, ay, may 11 pa pala sa baba. That is a total of 84 and then you divide it sa number of samples. So divided by 10, so that is 8.4. Kaya nakalagay dito class, x1 is 8.4. So pwede natin siya ilagay dito. And then on the other side, x2 is the mean of the group 2. So the same, I believe you are very knowledgeable on how to get the mean or how to get the average. Tell me if hindi na siya masundan ha, kasi masyadong mahaba yung computation nito. 5 plus 6 plus 3 plus 4 plus 7 plus 8 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 8. A total of 56 divided by the number of observations. That's a total of 10. So we have here 5.6. Na yung problema na lang natin is yung S sub x1 minus x2 natin. So, asan ako na siya ibutang? Dire na lang class. So ano nga yung formula natin for this one? The S, pagamay sa po ang space. Anyway, let's try to squeeze in everything. The S sub x1 minus x2 is equal to the square root. The square root of n1. Hindi ko talaga to memorize class because I don't do manual computation. I always use the software for this. N1, ay dapat pala malaking ano ito. Kopyahin ko muna siya. Kalisod pagsulat o gamay kayo. N1 S1 squared plus N2 S2 squared divided by N1 plus N2 minus 2 times N1 plus N2 divided by N1 times N2. So ito yung ating formula for the S sub x1 minus x2. Pero anong ibig sabihin ng N1 S1 squared? Di ba may formula din siya? Meron din itong formula, di ba? Ang formula niyan for the, lagay ko muna siya dito ha, erase ko lang siya later pag pinatuloy ko na ito. Ang formula ng ating N1 S1 squared is equal to summation of x1 squared minus the summation of x1 tapos, ay, sa baba pa lang x1. Sa labas yung squared ha. Divided by N1. So, anong ibig sabihin yan? Paano mo siya i-compute? Ang pag-compute nito, class, is, wait lang. Ganito. Kukunin muna natin yung square nilang lahat. So again, ang ibig sabihin ng x1 squared, square mo to sila isa-isa and you get the summation. Okay? So, wait lang. So, 8 squared, i-calculate pa dyan, no? 64. Okay. I hope nasundan ha. Please tell me if hindi nasundan. 10 squared is 100. 12 squared is 144. 6 times 6 is 36. This is 36. This is 49. This is 81. 64. Bilisan lang natin ha. Ang ginawa ko dyan, nag-square ako sa kanila lahat. This is 49. And this is 11 squared. This is 121. So, yan yung square nila lahat. And for us to get the summation of x1 squared. Ditin ko para mas klaro. Summation of x1 squared. I-add natin yan lahat, class. So, 64 plus 100 plus 144 plus 36 plus 36 plus 49 plus 81 plus 64 plus 49 and plus 121. That's a total of 744. Hope nasundan pa ha. So saan natin isusulat yung 744? Ito yan siya, class. Ito yan siya. So this is 744. So again, I hope nasundan pa. Ang ibig sabihin ng summation of x1 squared is first you have to square all scores and add all the squares. Okay? So kaya ito yung sinasabi ko na kapag marami tayong data, bukas pa tayo matatapos. Okay. Now, how about the summation of x1? Ito na part. Summation of x1. Nasa labas ang square ha. So mamaya pa tayo mag-square. Ang summation ng x1 is you just have to add everything. Ito yun siya. Summation of x1. Meaning, i-add natin lahat. 8 plus 10 plus 12 plus 6 plus 6 plus 7 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 11. That's a total of 84. Check that with your calculator. Basi na ako'y na-miss kung nag-add ko. Basig dili ta parehas og answer. Basig dili 84 ang inyo ha. Pero you check. Okay, let's recheck. 8 plus 10 plus 12 plus 6 plus 6 plus 7 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 11. Yes, that is 84. Hindi pa naman nagbabago yung aking sagot. 84 pa rin naman siya. I hope sa inyo din. Okay. Sige. So this is 84 here. Take note, class ha, na nasa labas ang square. And then N1, remember N1, the number of observations sa group 1. Group 1 pa lang tayo ha, mamaya natin sa group 2. So we have here N1 as 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is divided by 10. So we can now proceed in the computation of N1 S1 squared. This is 744 minus 84 squared. 84 squared is 7,056 divided by 10. So, syempre, PEMDAS. Unahin muna natin yung division. 7,056 divided by 10 is 705.6. So, N1 S1 squared is 744 minus 705.6 is 38.4. Again, this is 38.4. So meron na tayong sagot dyan. We can now proceed. The N1 S1 squared is 38.4. So ang hahanapin natin ngayon is si N2 S2 squared. And ganun pa rin yung process natin for this. Si N2 S2, Si N2S2 squared class, ganun pa rin. This will be the summation of the x2 squared minus the summation of x2 sa labas ang square divided by the N2. So napalitan lang siya ng 2 dyan kasi nasa group 2 na tayo. So for the summation of x2, ganun pa rin yung process natin, square natin lahat. So this is 25, 36, 9, 12, 49, 64, 36, 25, 16, and this is 64. And then we will be adding everything to get the summation of the x2 squared. Okay, let's add 25 plus 36 plus 9 plus 12 plus 49 plus 64 plus 36 plus 25 tabang plus 16 and plus 64. That's a total of 336. Kindly check base na ako'y na-miss or na ako'y na-mali og square din ha. Ay, na-judge ko na-miss. Ngayon 12 mo na ako answer dra. 16. This will be 16. Okay, ulit. 25 plus 36 plus 9 plus 16 plus 49 plus 64 plus 36 plus 25 plus 16 and plus 64. So this is a total of 340. So dito yan natin siya ilalagay. 340 minus summation of x2. Ito lang yung i-add natin. Sila lahat. Actually, nakalagay na dyan sa screen. Ito yun siya. Summation of x2. If you get to see this symbol, that means summation. Meaning you have to add. You have to add everything. So 5 plus 6 plus 3 plus 4 plus 7 plus 8 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4, and lastly, plus 8. So that's a total of 56. So again, nasa labas ang squared ha, 56 squared. And then N2, ilan ito lahat ng number of observation? That's a total of 10. So 340 minus 56 squared is 3,136 divided by 10. Tama ba? Ito. Ulit, 56 squared. 3,136. So this is 340 minus 3,136 divided by 10 is 313.6. Therefore, the N2S2 squared is 26.4. Tama ba? 26.4. Okay, 26.4. So, kompleto na natin dito, 26.4. Divided by N1. N1, remember, is 10. 10 yan sila lahat. Plus N2, 10 din. Minus 2. Times N1, that is still 10. Plus 10. Divided by N1 times N2. So, this is 10 times 10. Okay, do not forget the square root. So 38.4 plus 26.4 is 64.8. 64.8 divided by 10 plus 10, 20 minus 2, that's 18. Times 10 plus 10, that's 20. Divided by 10 times 10, that's 100. Okay? Sundan pa. Again, nag-add muna ako ha. And then nag-minus ako dito sa baba. So, 64.8 divided by 18 is 3.6. 3.6. Times 20 divided by 100, kalkyun pa dyan, no? 0.2. Get the square root also. So 3.6 times 0.2 is 0.72. Now let's get the square root of 0.72. Tapos kayo. 0. Kopyahin ko muna ha, mamaya na ako mag-round off. 0.8485281,374. So this is now the S sub x1 minus x2. Lizard. Okay. Mamaya na ako mag-round off. Okay, so our data is now complete. We have now the S sub x1 minus x2. That is 0.8485281,374. So let's continue. So this is 8.4 minus 5.6. That's 2.8. Step by step, sabi ha. Pero nakaulit ning asking a number. 85281,374. Therefore, our t-score, we call that t-score. 2.8 divided by 0.8485,281,374. Let's round it off to 2 decimal places. Our answer here is 3.30. Okay. Okay. That's t-score is equal to 3.30. Pakikopya sa basig na yung nagakopy. Paki-complete sa ang ginakopy and then we will interpret later. Okay na? Kindly react. Kindly thumbs up if okay na. Para alam ko kung mag-proceed na ako. Kasi nag-proceed ko din tapos wala pa din naman. Wait lang. Okay. Sige, I'll urinate na lang first. And then we'll continue when I get back. Okay na? Kain tayo, no? Haba-haba na yun na tayo. I'll be deleting all the numbers or the writings now on the screen. Please take note of the t-score, that's 3.30. We need to interpret first what do you mean by the 3.30. Okay? So, let's have this. Take note muna of the decision rule. Kasi we are doing manual computation, so we have a different decision rule here. We don't have a p-value, so we will not be using the p-value. Now, for the manual computation of the t-test, this is our decision rule. If the computed t is greater than the tabular t, reject the null hypothesis. Otherwise, accept it. Okay? Again, if the computed t value is greater than the tabular t, I will be showing you the table. Okay, again, if the computed t is greater than the tabular t, ano gagawin? Reject the null hypothesis. If baliktad, if the computed t is lesser than the tabulated t, that's the time you accept the null hypothesis. Please take note of that. Okay? Now, let's look at the tabular t. Kasi yung computed t, meron naman na tayong computed t. Ito yung na-compute natin, 3.30. So, please take note of that. That's regardless of the sign, ha. So, ito yung table. Siyempre, hindi natin to i-memorize. Kadakuan ni kadaghanan number. Okay. So, ang tawag natin dito is critical values for the t distribution. So, hahanapin natin yung tabular t dito. So, how do we look for the tabular t? Una, we have to decide first whether we are doing a one-tailed test or a two-tailed test. Let me check if you can still remember. What do you think class are we going to do here? One-tailed test or two-tailed test? Ano nga ibig sabihin ng one-tailed and two-tailed na yan? Ginawa natin yan sa z-test and it's the same thing sa t-test, yung one-tailed and two-tailed. Diba? Pag one-tailed, if the hypothesis is directional. Diba? Yun ang ibig sabihin ng one-tailed test natin. Merong direction. Meaning, meron tayong pinapaboran doon sa two groups natin. Meron kang mga hints there like using the word more, greater, lesser, or kung ano pang pwedeng gamitin natin for comparison. Pero kung two-tailed test, the hypothesis is non-directional, meaning wala tayong binibigyan ng pabor. Okay, very good. Ayan yung ibig sabihin ng one-tailed and two-tailed. Now, in this problem, balikan muna natin yung ating hypothesis. The two methods of teaching do not significantly differ in improving the performance. Or the two methods of teaching significantly differ in improving the performance. So what do you think? Is this a two-tailed test or a one-tailed test? Sa tingin ninyo ito? Yes, very good. This one is a two-tailed test. Kasi wala ka naman dyang pinapaboran, walang direction. We are just stating that either merong difference ang dalawa or walang difference. Hindi tayo nagsasabi, class, na the lecture is greater than or lesser than the other one, the experiential training or the method of teaching. So, number one, this is a two-tailed test. Okay? Two-tailed test siya. And then another thing is yung alpha. Okay? Yung alpha natin, yung significance level. Diba? Most of the time, our significance level is 0.05. If we are very strict, then we will be using 0.05. 0.01. Pero hindi lang silang dalawa ang pwedeng values ha ng alpha natin. Pwedeng 0.5 if we are not really that strict. That's 50%, meaning we are allowing 50% room for error. Pero this time, we are just giving 0.05, which means 5% room for error. Yung sinabi ko kanina na 0.01 if we are very strict, that's 1% room for error lang. Okay? So yan yung hahanapin natin next, ang significance level. Dito tayo sa baba kasi two-tailed test man. Kung one-tailed test, ito yung sundin natin. Nasa taas siya. Pero since two-tailed test, ito yung sundin natin. 0.05. So most likely, our tabularity is found here. Pero to finally identify the tabularity, you have to also identify the DF. The DF is the degrees of freedom. Okay? Actually, if you're going to use the JASP software, you will also see in the table the DF and actually the T-score. Pero sa manual computation kasi gagamitin natin sila lahat. Okay? Para malocate lang yung tabularity. Ano nga yung DF class? Yung DF class is the degrees of freedom and this is our formula. If isang grupo lang, DF is n-1. This is actually, ang DF is the number of observation or observations that are free to vary. Okay, that are free to vary. Pwede silang magkaiba-iba. Basta the number of observations. So we are talking about the sample size. Now again, if isang grupo lang, that's n-1. Pero pag dalawang grupo yung kino-compare dito, that is n1 plus n2 minus 2. Ito yung magiging formula ng DF. Now, since this is a t-test, meron tayong dalawang grupo, di ba? Si experiential and yung lecture. So, ang gagawin natin dito, ilan ba yung observation natin sa N1? Di ba? Parehas din sila ng 10. Meron kasing cases class na hindi sila magkapareha. Pwede yon. Na mas marami yung participants mo sa group 1 kaysa sa participants mo sa group 2. Okay? I hope that is clear. Pero this time, pantay sila. We have 10 participants or respondents sa group 1. Meron din tayong 10 sa group 2. So this is 10 plus 10, that's 20, minus 2, 18. So this is our DF. Okay, please take note, our DF is 18. Bakit ito yung ginamit natin na formula? Kasi we have two groups class na kino-compare. The other formula is used if you only have one group. So ginagamit natin siya sa Z-test. Ito for the t-test, dalawang grupo. Again, the DF is N1 plus N2 minus 2. And for this case, that is 18. Okay, let me delete the writings on the screen. So again, our DF is 18. This is 18 here. And then 0.05. Hahanapin natin class kung saan sila magtatagpo. Okay, this one. So ito yun. Our tabularity is 2.101. Okay, please take note. Our tabularity is 2.101. Now, let's make a decision. 2.101. Let me go back here. Again, ano daw sabi? If the computed T is greater than the tabularity, reject the null hypothesis. Now let's give the values here. Our computed T a while ago is 3.30 and our tabulated T based sa table natin ng critical values, ano ngayon? 2.101. Kalimot. 2.101. So ano ba yung ating symbol here? Greater than or less than? Siyempre greater than. So yes, greater than itong computed T natin. So ang pipiliin natin is we will reject the null hypothesis. So yan yung ating decision. I-reject natin si null hypothesis kay the t-score, the computed t is greater than the tabular t. So again, i-reject natin ito kasi there is a significant difference in the method of teaching class. Meron silang difference in improving the performance. Again, i-reject natin yung ating null hypothesis and accept the alternative. There is a difference between the two groups in terms of improving the performance. And paano natin malalaman kung paano natin malalaman kasi sabi dito merong difference. So ano yung mas nagpa-improve? Actually, ang titingnan natin is yung mean. Okay? Ang mean ng experiential ay 8.4 and ang mean ng lecture ay 5.6. And according to statistics, there is a significant difference between the two. May pagkakaiba in improving the performance. Pero since merong difference, ano yung mas nakapag-improve? Syempre yung may mas mataas na mean. And that is the experiential. So ngayon, makaka-conclude tayo na again, there is really a difference in the two methods of teaching in improving the performance of the trainees, and among the two, the experiential method of training has really increased the performance based on the mean. Kasi it has a greater mean compared to the lecture. Scores kasi nila ito, di ba? Sa performance nila. So since mataas ang score ng experiential, siya yung most likely nakakapag-improve. Do you have questions, class? Sa ginawa natin na computation? Still have time. Wala. Sige. Okay. So this is how we are going to use the Excel for the t-test. Okay? Independent sample t-test ha. I believe na ano ko na to last time naturo. But anyway, ganito ang gagawin ninyo. Lagay na natin t-score. The p-value. So the Excel will compute the p-value. Ilagay mo siya sa box kung saan mo gusto makita yung p-value na i-compute ni Excel. And then again, ito yung scores kanina na nag-manual computation tayo. So kinopy ko lang siya sa Excel class. So we have here, click fx, that's function, and then look for t-test. So ito yung t-test here. Makikita niyo na siya agad. So for those na walang access sa JASP but can access the Excel, you may also do this. Pag wala talaga both Excel and the JASP software, you really have to do the manual computation. Okay? Now click t-test, and then the RA1 will be for the group 1. So I will just highlight this one. Ito yung group 1 natin kanina, diba? Experiential teaching. So, i-highlight mo lang yung scores nila. And for the RA2 will be for the group 2. So, this is 5 to 8. Ayan. And then the tails, na-mention natin ito kanina when we did the manual computation. We are going to do two-tail distribution since our hypothesis is non-directional. And then for the type, basahin nyo yung nasa box class. Ang nakalagay dyan, type is the kind of t-test. So, i-type nyo yung 1 if it is a paired t-test, and 2 if it is two sample equal variance, meaning homoscedastic, and that means independent sample t-test ito na parametric kasi equal ang variance. Pero kung hindi equal ang variance, ita-type mo 3, this is referring to the Mann-Whitney test, yung non-parametric equivalent ng t-test. Now again, we are doing two sample t-test. that are independent from each other. So type 2 there and click OK, and then automatically it will give you the p-value. So again, the Excel will not give us the t-score. Instead, it will be the p-value. So since this is the p-value, our decision rule here is if the p-value is lesser than 0.05, again, if the p-value is lesser than 0.05, reject the null hypothesis. If it is the other way around, syempre, if the p-value is greater than 0.05, then you have to accept the null hypothesis. So in this case, since the p-value is 0.003, or if we round it off 0.004, then that is lesser than, right? Lesser than 0.05. So yes, we are rejecting the null hypothesis. There is a significant difference between the two methods of teaching. So also, indeed, we have class A. We have the same answer with that of the manual computation. So sa manual computation kanina, kahit t-score yung ginamit natin, di ba, ni-reject natin si null hypothesis. Kung Excel naman yung gagamitin natin, though p-value lang yung nakuha natin dito, pero it's the same thing. We are still rejecting the null hypothesis. So yung pagkaiba lang, syempre, mapadali yung buhay natin here for the Excel. Since magka-click-click lang tayo, highlight the scores, and then automatically it will give you the p-value. Okay, any question about the use of Excel for the t-test? I hope nasundan yun. Wala pangutana. So let me delete this. And let's try the JASP. So for the JASP, remember to save your data first. So sa Excel pa rin kasi tayo mag-encode, pero isi-save mo yung data mo as CSV. Okay, dapat naka-CSV type siya. So kagaya nito, save as CSV, delimited. Kasi ito lang yung mababasa ni JASP. So let's open the JASP. Let's see if parallel ba lahat, manual man, Excel or JASP. Titingnan natin if we are still rejecting the null hypothesis. So class, diba, the JASP starts here. You open the file first. I placed that one sa pharmaceutical statistics na folder and I labeled it as t-test. So that's the first one, importing our data to JASP. So sa JASP class, you just have to make sure that all the scores are encoded in one column and all the independent variables also are placed in one column. And before you move on with the testing, you have to make sure first that tama yung type of data. So in this case, I will ano nakalagay? Ordinal. So I will change this one as scale class kasi these are real numbers. Score nila ito sa performance. So hindi naman siya ordinal. So again, pinalitan ko siya kasi kanina yung kanyang symbol is itong parang histograph or yung bar charts. So ordinal kasi yan siya. And then this is scale. And sa methods of teaching, this is already correct. This is nominal since by category siya. Now, if we're going to do the t-test, just click t-test here sa taas, sa tabi ng descriptives, and look for the independent sample t-test. Independent sample t-test pa ha, hindi pa tayo nagdi-discuss ng paired t-test. So just click that and then, let's wait. Okay. Now let's check first whether we can really use t-test here. if normal ba yung distribution. So click assumption checks here. Sorry, hindi ko pa pala nalalagay. Ilagay muna natin yung ating variables. Ito yung scores class sa variables. Yan siya. Under sa variables, yun yung ating outcome variable or dependent variable. So yung mga numerical data natin. And then sa grouping variable will be the independent variable. Okay? And then wait for the table to be completed. Before tayo mag-check later kung ano yung magiging decision natin, mag-assumption checks muna tayo. You can click the descriptives to know the mean. So automatically, it will give you both the mean and the standard deviation. And then for the normality check, click normality. And then let's see the p-value. For the normality class, that is called Shapiro-Wilk test, pag ang p-value here is greater than 0.05, then yes, the data is normally distributed. Okay? Ganyan yung pag-interpret. So just like this one, for the experiential, it's 0.447. So according dito, normally distributed daw yung data sa experiential group. And that is also true for the lecture na group, 0.591. So we don't have a problem with the normality of the data. Walang outliers, walang extremes. So that's the first assumption met by the collected data. Now, for the equality of variance, this is the second assumption kasi dapat equal silang dalawa ng variance. So, test for equality of variances is called the Levine's test. We are still looking at the p-value. So, the p-value here, if the p-value is also greater than 0.5, then yes, there is equal variance or equal variances among the two groups. Now, in this case, it's 0.527. So yes, equal yung variances ng dalawang grupo natin. So check na lahat, both normality and equality of variance. Therefore, tama yung ating decision na gagamit tayo ng independent sample t-test. Kasi parametric t-test ito. Now, for the interpretation of the result. So, ang advantage ng JASP kasi, unlike sa Excel, ang ibibigay ng Excel is automatically the p-value. So, di ba pag i-round off natin yung answer kanina sa Excel, that is 0.004. So, parehas sila ng p-value. Yung lang sa JASP, it will also give you the t-score. And yes, we can confirm that our answer for the manual computation is also correct. Diba? Look at your notes. During the manual computation, we got the t-score of 3.3. And ibibigay niya din yung degrees of freedom. And tama din yung ating kinumpute kanina, and that is 18. But for the interpretation, you can either use this one or use this one. Pero para madali yung life natin, kasi kung t-score ang gagamitin natin, we will still look at the table kasi. Pero pag p-value, diretso na. If the p-value is lesser than 0.05, reject the null hypothesis. Now, since this is 0.004 and indeed it is a really lesser than 0.05, then yes, we are still rejecting the null hypothesis. So it's parallel from the manual to the Excel to the JASP. I-reject pa rin talaga natin ang null hypothesis, and that meron talagang difference si experiential and si lecture na methods of teaching. Negative, bakit negative ang sagot mo sa t-score? You check kung saang part ka nagkamali, bakit siya nag-negative. Kasi hindi yan siya negative talaga. Baka baliktad yung baliktad ang yung group 1 and group 2. Paki-check doon sa sinulat ko kanina sa screen. Anyway, we have a recorded discussion of this. So balikan mo siya and tingnan mo kung saan banda sa computation ka nagkamali? Bakit naging negative yung iyong sagot? Kasi hindi yun siya negative. You have questions about the use of Excel. So this is the beauty of the statistical softwares. This will really make our lives easier compared to doing the manual computation, especially if we have a lot of data. It will really take a lot of time for us to complete the computation. And since marami masyadong number, the software will actually save us from confusion. Okay? Any concern, questions, or clarifications regarding the first example for the t-test? Meron ba kayong gustong i-clarify? I hope nagkasinabutaan na class ato ang independent sample t-test. Let's have another one. Sige. Hindi pa ako umabot dito. Let me confirm. Umabot na ba ako dito last time sa midterms? Ito na example. Hindi ko maalala. Hindi ko talaga maalala. Dagan kayo ko binahimo. Wala pa. Okay, let's have another example. A study was conducted by a group of fourth-year pharmacy students in a certain school to determine the level of male and female community pharmacists' awareness on antimicrobial dispensing. So a standardized survey questionnaire was adapted from an international research in 1 to 5 Likert scale. So again, the study is about looking at the difference between the male and female community pharmacists' awareness sa pag-dispense ng antimicrobial drug. So, we're going to look at the conceptual framework of the study. The independent variable here will be the sex. So we have here the male and the female community pharmacist. And what we are looking into is the dependent variable. And let me just complete it. It's the level of awareness. Okay? Level of awareness on antimicrobial dispensing. Kasi baka naman mas knowledgeable pala or mas aware pala yung mga lalaki kaysa mga babae or the other way around. So that's our drive, right? Especially the Department of Health. That's one of their program, antimicrobial, yung AMR, antimicrobial resistance. Kailangan ma-educate lahat. Kasi we are, ano na ngayon? Di ba ang motto sa bacteria, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Yan yung problem natin with the antimicrobial nowadays. If we don't use them properly, the bacteria will be stronger and hindi na sila mapapatay ng mga existing na antimicrobials natin. So, these are examples of research questions. Statement of the problem. And I believe since marami kayong research na pinagdaanan sa senior high, you are very familiar of what statement of the problem is. Pag sinabing statement of the problem, these are specific questions that you want to answer in your research through data gathering. So the data gathering can be through the use of questionnaire or through interview, or for pharmacy, most of the time, it's through experimentations in the laboratory. Pero in this case, since this is just a non-experimental descriptive comparative na study, so it's just the use of the questionnaire. So ito yung mga specific questions that the researchers wanted to answer in their study. Number 1, what is the level of awareness on antimicrobial dispensing of our female community pharmacists? And number 2, what is the level of awareness on antimicrobial dispensing of the male community pharmacists. So, dyan, level lang ang tinatanong. So, we only need descriptive statistics here for numbers 1 and 2. We just need the mean. Kasi diba, I believe, nakapag-answer din kayo ng mga questionnaire. And sa isang questionnaire, maraming questions. So, kapag nag-process tayo sa statistics, kukunin lang natin yung mean ng lahat ng questions doon sa questionnaire na yon. Kaya kung nakikita nyo, ang nakalagay sa numbers 1 and 2, descriptive statistics lang, mean and the standard deviation. So we are going to locate the center of the distribution through the mean, and we are going to check whether the collected data are precise or not. Now sa number 3, dito papasok si inferential statistics, and dito papasok yung mga different statistical tools na tinuro ko sa inyo, and ituturo pa yung iba. So number 3, is there a significant difference in the level of awareness on antimicrobial dispensing between male and female community pharmacists? So gusto natin malaman ngayon kung may difference ba yung kanilang level of awareness. And take note that we only have 2 groups here, babae lang at lalaki. And take note also na they are independent from each other. Kasi magkaibang persons yun, magkaibang respondents bawat grupo. Iba yung respondents natin sa male group, iba yung respondents ng female groups. So if that's the case, I mean, then independent sample t-test is really suitable for this. We just have to check for normality if talaga bang independent sample t-test yung gagawin. Okay? But anyway, for a start, it will be independent sample t-test kasi nga number 1, dalawang grupo na kino-compare, and number 2, the 2 groups are independent from each other. Pero, before mo masasabing mag-i-independent sample t-test ka talaga at hindi non-parametric test yung gagamitin mo, you have to satisfy first this assumption. So number 1, normality of data, we can check that one sa JASP later. So that's the other beauty of JASP. Kasi kung manual computation tayo, mag-a-assume hanggang assumptions lang talaga tayo. Mahirapan tayo kung mag-graph pa tayo, and then meron pang skewness na i-compute before tayo makasabi na normally distributed talaga ang data. Pero sa JASP kasi, i-check na lang natin yung p-values. And at the same time, equality of variance. So, chinek natin yan kanina sa first example with the JASP also. And take note, number 3, independence of observation. Nasabi ko na to kanina that the two groups are independent from each other. Now, since the data should be normally distributed, so syempre there should be no outliers or extreme values. And most likely kasi, dapat, ang ideal kasi nito, dapat the sampling technique is random sampling. So, random sampling, kung mamimili ka ng respondents mo, dapat random. Yung pagbibigyan mo ng questionnaire sa study. And the independent variable should be in group. So kagaya nito, nakagrupo sila. Isang grupo sa babae, isang grupo sa lalaki. Yung example kanina na experiential and lecture, group din yon, di ba? Isang group for experiential, isang group for the lecture. However, the dependent variable should at least be interval, meaning we should be dealing with real numbers here. It can be product of experimentation in the laboratory or real numbers coming from our survey. So let's see. I have a prepared data actually here. Kaya lang kasi yung aking prepared data dito ay marami. Wait. Open ko na. And since marami siya, pag nag-manual computation taani, murag man. Asa na to? Sorry. Di mo na ako mag-manual computation, ha? Kay, kung tanaw na to class, tabang 40 kabuk atong sample. 40 kabuk atong samples din, he. 20, I think, for the male or 20 for the female. Kung mag-manual computation ta, remember, 10 lang yun kanina, di ba? 10 lang yun siya and medyo mahaba na and it's confusing. So, maglisod ta kung mag-manual computation ta, ani. Let me just use just, okay? Hindi ko din magagamit si Excel dito kasi iba yung pagka-encode ng aking data here. Sa Excel kasi dapat nakahanay manggod ni siya. When I say nakahanay sa Excel, kailangan properly ma-identify like this one. Ganito dapat kasi yung pagka-encode kung Excel yung gagamitin natin. Male and female. And then dito yung kanilang mga scores. So nahiwalay dapat yung scores ng male sa female kapag ka sa Excel. Kung pinagtabi natin sila like aware or track, kung susundin natin yung pag-encode na yan, pero dapat magkasunod lahat ng male. So male ka dapat muna lahat before ka mag-female. So yun yung problem ko here. Hindi ko magamit ang manual computation since marami yung ating data and hindi ko din magamit si Excel kasi hindi maayos yung pagka-encode ng data. Okay, kailangan magkasunod-sunod lahat yung male, magkasunod-sunod lahat ng female. Kagaya ng example natin kanina, if you can still remember for the first example, kahit nakaganito, dito yung mga scores lahat, scores ng mga numbers dito, pero yung experiential kasi, nakaisa sila lahat before nag-start for the lecture. Dito mahihirapan si Excel kasi kung titingnan nyo, naka-alternate. Male, female, male, female, male, female, and so on. So, si Just lang talaga ang may kakayahan na mag-analyze ng ganitong pagka-encode ng data. Okay, so be careful also with the encoding. Sige. So, since Just lang yung magagamit ko nito, so let's open Just. This is already saved in my laptop and naka-CSV na ito. Naka-CSV format na. So, diretso tayo sa Just class. This one. Diretso tayo sa Just. And then I will just open the file. Nasa research capability building yon. And naka-name yon as independent sample dataset. So I will import the data and look at this. You have now the awareness, yung score nila sa awareness, scores I mean, and yung track yung kanilang sex. Kasi diba we are comparing the male and the female. Okay? So i-check muna natin if tama yung ating data type. So yes, this is scale for the level of awareness. These are true numbers. These are the mean scores of each participant. And then for the track, yes, this is also correct. Nominal siya. Okay? Kasi category, di ba? Male and female. Now, since we are comparing, then we are going to do the t-test. So we have here independent sample t-test. Click that. And then remember, ang ilalagay natin sa variables ay yung scores mismo. So the aware. And then remember ang pangalan ng track doon. yung sa male and female ang pangalan track. So ilalagay ko din siya dito. So automatically, it will give us the t-score that's negative 0.033. So basig malibog mo ha kay kagainan na nag-ask na si Celine pala yun, na negative yung answer niya. Pero sabi ko, i-check mo muna kung bakit nag-negative. Pero let me clarify, yes, the t-score can be negative. Pero when you are going to look at the table for the critical values, just look at the number and disregard the sign. Kagaya ng ginawa natin for the z-test. Kasi it's either positive or negative. The most important thing there is the number. So this is the T-score. The degrees of freedom is 38 kasi meron atang, well, let me check the descriptives. Yes, the sample size for female is 20. For the male, it's still 20. So, 20 plus 20 minus 2, that's 38. And then the p-value for this is 0.974. So later na tayo mag-interpret niyan. Let's check first for assumptions. Let's have the normality. Assumption checks, test of normality, Shapiro-Wilk. The p-value for the female is 0.318. The p-value for the male is 0.390. What do you think? Are the data sets normally distributed or not? Sige daw. Sige akong istorya din wala dahil ninyo to na-absorb. Based on the p-values there, normally distributed or not? I'll wait. Normal. Okay, very good. Sino ito? Marijo. Okay. Ano nga yung ating decision rule here? If the p-value is greater than 0.05, then the data set is normally distributed. So as you can see, 0.318 and 0.390 are both greater than 0.05. So okay na yung first na assumption. Normally distributed. While the second one is the equality of variance. Para ma-check lang talaga natin if tama ba yung paggamit natin ng independent sample t-test. Okay? Kasi again, parametric test ito. So we have here, p-value is 0.498. So parehas class sila ng decision rule. If the p-value for the Levine's test is greater than 0.05, then the variances are equal. So this one, 0.498, it's greater than 0.05. So dalawang assumption ang na-check na natin and nakamit na ng criteria. So tama nga class na gagamitin natin si independent sample t-test. Now, let's have this one. P-value is 0.974. Ano kaya yung ating here? Ano kaya yung magiging decision natin? Reject or accept the null hypothesis? Manawag tabi basig nangatulog na ning uban dinhi. Pag dili mo answer, wana, absent na gyud ni. Absent na gyud ni kay wana nakatubag. Be, let me check. Ang mag-answer paki-direct message sa akin ha. Kinsa may itong tawagon din hibe. Sigwa ni ng minaw ning uban. Alam ni diri sa Zoom. Mag-ano na lang po. Pwede ko sa list of participants and randomly. Precious. What do you think? Are we going to accept or reject the null hypothesis? Precious. No, question mark. Hindi ka sure. Ano sa ganito ang decision rule, ane? Okay, let me see. Diba, pag ang p-value is lesser than 0.05, that's the time, lesser than 0.05. That's the time you reject the null hypothesis. Pila man niya itong p-value? 0.974. That is greater than, diba? O greater than 0.05. So pag greater than, our decision is accept the null hypothesis. Okay? Accept the null hypothesis. Ang hypothesis kasi natin dito, nakalimutan ko pala yung hypothesis. Diba we are differentiating the two? So pwede natin siyang, una for the HA, there is a significant difference in the level of awareness on antimicrobial dispensing between the male and female community pharmacist. So, ito yung ating HA. Pagdating sa HO, lagyan mo lang ng, instead of a, gawin mo no. So, anong sabi? We are going to accept this. We are going to accept this null hypothesis. Meaning, wala palang difference yung level of awareness ng mga babae at lalaking community pharmacist class sa kanilang, in terms of antimicrobial dispensing. So, it's not about the sex. Kasi pantay lang yung awareness nila. Ay, yun ang ibig sabihin ng accepting the null hypothesis. And please do not be confused kasi magre-reject lang tayo ng null hypothesis if the p-value is lesser than 0.05. Okay? I hope that's clear. Do you have questions or clarifications? Baka may gusto kayong itanong. Sige. I hope klaro na siya. Ang pangutana, Ani, ma'am, paano kung hindi na-satisfy yung mga assumption checks? Example lang ha, example. Do not look at the data here. Tabunan na to ng mga data din ha. Do not look at the data here. Example lang, hindi na-satisfy yung assumption checks. Hindi normally distributed, hindi equal ang variances, or hindi scale yung type of data. Hindi siya interval or ratio. Ano siya? Ordinal siya. Siyempre, you cannot use the independent sample t-test. Ang equivalent, ang non-parametric equivalent ng ating independent sample t-test is called the Mann-Whitney test. Okay? And anong gagawin? Pag sa just class, unclick the student t-test. The student t-test is referring to the independent sample t-test, and click the Mann-Whitney. Ganun lang ang gagawin sa just. Palitan mo lang siya kapag hindi na-satisfy yung mga assumptions na yan. Instead of the student t-test, which is referring to the independent sample t-test, papalitan mo siya here on the left side ng Mann-Whitney test. So, ang nakalagay na dyan, note, Mann-Whitney U-test. Ang ibibigay niya is still the p-value, and paano siya i-interpret? Ganun pa rin. If the p-value is less than 0.05, reject the null hypothesis. So parehas lang yung decision rule ni t-test and ni Mann-Whitney. Kailan gagamitin si Mann-Whitney? If we cannot satisfy the assumptions for the t-test. Okay? I hope that is clear ha. Ganun lang yung pag-navigate ng paggamit ng ating JASP software if you're going to do the Mann-Whitney test. How about po ang t-test ma'am? Hindi na po siya tingnan dito sa JASP, yung p-value lang. Yeah, yung p-value lang. Wait lang. Palitan ko ha. Balik ko siya sa student t-test. Though ibibigay niya yung t-score, pero you have the p-value na kasi, diretso na yon. Okay? Diretso na. Kahit patitingnan mo yung t-score, that's 0.033, kindly, pakitandaan yung t-score. Diba ang ano natin dito, decision natin is accept the null hypothesis. Kung for example, gusto mo talaga tingnan yung table, saan nga yung table natin? This one. Ayan. Ay. Saan na to? This one. Kung titingnan natin yan siya sa table, two-tailed test pa rin, diba? Kasi non-directional naman yung ating test. And then, this is 0.05 here. What was the DF again? It's 38, right? Dito lang tayo sa 40 kasi nalakbang na niya siya pag abot sa 30, nag-jump na siya sa 40. Then let's see. This one. 0.05. 2.021. So the tabularity, pakitandaan 2.021. The tabular T is 2.021. What was the computed T again? Na nandoon sa just? 0.33. That was 0.33? Okay. May negative siya, diba? Sabi ko kanina, disregard the sign. If we are going to use the table, disregard the sign, we will just use the number. So ano ba yung mas malaki dito? Syempre si tabular T, ang mas malaki. Anong nakalagay sa decision rule? If the computed T is greater than the tabular T, reject the null hypothesis. Pero in this case, the computed T is not greater than the tabular T. This is greater here. So this is accept the null hypothesis. So whether you use the p-value for the JASP or use the t-score na nasa JASP, ganun pa rin yung magiging decision natin. Accept the null hypothesis. Okay? So you can just check kung tama ba yung naging decision mo sa JASP with the t-score para sure na sure ka talaga with your decision. Pwede mo yun siya gamitin. Okay? Medyo mahirap lang ang t-score kasi you have to look at this complicated table here. Chart. Maraming numbers kasi, and then mag-identify ka pa kung one-tailed or two-tailed, mag-identify ka pa ano yung DF, and then i-compare mo pa kung alin yung greater sa computed and sa tabular before you can reach the conclusion. So just by looking at the p-value, automatic na yon. Okay? So nasatisfy natin lahat, diba? Normality, equality of variance, independence of observation, and I don't think we have outliers there. We just don't know with the random sampling though, but our data is interval. So ito yung nakita natin na tables kanina sa JASP. Take note class of our decision rule. A p-value of less than or equal to 0.05 means that the difference is significant. So kay significant man ang difference, ito yung sinasabi natin na reject the null hypothesis. Okay? Sa assumption checks, if the p-value is higher than 0.05, ito p-value, it means that the distribution of the data set is normal. So normally distributed yan kasi it's more than 0.05. And that is also the case for the test of equality of variances. So we have here 0.498, which is higher than 0.05. And that means the variance of the data set is homogeneous, meaning equal sila. So yes, tama nga yung paggamit natin for the independent sample t-test. Okay? So yan yung decision rule natin, nasabi ko na yan kanina. You reject the null hypothesis if the p-value is less than 0.05. Okay? Questions? What time is it? 10:15? Mga 10 minutes na lang kasi we'll leave the conference at 10:25. Baka may gusto kayong itanong sa t-test. Wala. Sure na. Yung next week, we will have a quiz first sa t-test. After the quiz, we will have this one, the t-test for correlated groups. And when you say t-test for correlated groups, ito yung tinatawag natin na paired t-test. Okay? So, iba din ang formula niya. Medyo mahaba din ang computation nito. Check ko pa ang schedule ko. Please be updated with the schedule for the special quiz. I don't know yet if kailan ako magkakaroon ng extra time for that. Again, we will be doing this sa next meeting after the quiz. Itong paired t-test. So, iba din siya. Iba yung ating gagawin dito. Now, paano yung quiz? Ano ba ang quiz? Yung magma-manual computation talaga, show your solution. Yeah, ang topic today ang i-quiz next week. Again, ang magma-manual computation talaga, show your solutions. But if you have access with the Excel, I need a screen recording for that na isasubmit nyo din sa akin. A screen recording of you doing the math either using the Excel or the JAS. Okay? And then, ayun, yung topic natin today, yun yung ating i-quiz.